Welcome to the People Profit Podcast, where we explore how investing in people and intentional leadership drives real success. I'm Sandra Coker, CEO of Human Power Solutions and the author of the best-selling book, People Profit. Today, we're talking about what it takes to build intelligent business in the age of AI, leading people through massive change while staying resilient and human-centered. Our guest today is Ted Wolf. He's a co-founder and CEO of Guidewise. Ted grew a company from 2 employees and $1,000 in financing to 650 billing people across 13 offices. He's the author of The Intelligent Equation and focuses on the human side of AI and business transformation. I'm very excited for this conversation. Ted, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to the conversation also.
I am too. So, to our audience today, if Ted's insights on intelligent leadership and navigating this hypervelocity change resonates with you, please hit the like, subscribe, and share this episode with a leader in your network. Your support really helps to spread these important conversations. Ted, you ready to go?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Awesome. All right. So I love this because you're a man after my own heart. You started a business with just 2 employees and $1,000, right?
Yep.
What were some of the biggest lessons you learned from growing it to hundreds of people across multiple offices?
I learned I had to be very, very humble, and I had to relearn an awful lot about how to manage and lead people. Leading people is leading them through goals and painting a picture of the future. Managing is executing on those goals so they actually move the needle and make something happen in the business. So today we're at I'm going to say a pivot point, an inflection point. That inflection point is AI, and that is why I'm interested in talking to people about an intelligent business, particularly those owners of businesses in the mid-sized market doing between, I'll say, $20 million and $100, $150 million in revenue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a really interesting time right now. People talking about reducing headcount, and I'm like, well, those are people. That's mortgages that you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and but the technology is just running rampant. What kinds of things do you talk about with your mid-sized companies to help them, kind of reset their expectations?
Well, what I try to focus them on is developing a picture of what's really happening and how AI can really help them. And one of the best ways I found to do that is imagine you're going into work someday and you have 5 things on your to-do list that you want to work on. You get to the end of the day and you say, I could only work on 1 or 2 of the things I had planned. And that happens day after day. Well, what's really happening is fires are now running the business. You're not running the business. So fires are preoccupying and they're taking a lot of your people's time, which means they're not really productive. And also it can reflect, I'm going to say, an inaccurate picture of the business, because if you don't understand where all the fires are coming from and what's causing the fires, you're going to be in that hamster wheel where you're always putting out fires and there's no system to take you out of that fire environment so that you can focus on what's good. So imagine this. I go into the office, I have 5 to-dos. At the end of the day, I actually thought about those 5 things.
Yeah.
Why?
Wow.
Because the fires disappeared, and because all of the repetitive things, the noise, the interruptions, the change in, I'll say, priorities, it all ends. And it ends because you've really put a good foundation in that AI can thrive on.
Mm-hmm. Love that. That's so good. So thinking about fires and things like that, in some of the research and some of the things that we talked about, you mentioned there was a key moment where you lost 40% in one day. That's a big fire. That's like that's a big one. How did that shape your approach to talk about the story, and how did it change your approach to leadership and your thoughts about resilience?
Yeah, okay. In the beginning, my brother and I started the business. We were the 2 original employees. We left IBM and started a technical consulting and a staffing business. So when that happened, we walked in one Friday afternoon and 40% of our revenue disappeared because one of our employees decided they wanted to start their own business, and they took several of our accounts and good employees. So we had non-competes and we could have prosecuted, but we said, who wants to join a business for the next 3 years? The main question is going to be, where's the court suit?
Yeah.
So we did not prosecute, and we sat down and we did this in a few days, and it took a few days. But we actually said, we own this. That person did whatever anybody would do. We just handed it to them on a platter. That's our fault because we mismanaged the company and did not lead it as good leaders. So we came to the conclusion that we had a business and we had employees who were helping us fulfill our goal and dream of the business.
Yeah.
We had to focus on their goal. We had to focus on what made them feel worthwhile and kept them really involved and engaged, but also what would attract high performing individuals who could work in the culture that we wanted. So we worked on the culture and we changed, and that we knew they had to win before we win. We accepted that. We admitted that. We had conversations with our employees at the time. And at the time, we probably had, I'm going to say, between 40 and maybe 45 employees, 50 employees, something like that.
Hmm.
So we sat down and talked to them and had an awful lot of dialogue and communicated with them. And then we could, in turn, better communicate back to them because it was an honest listening. No hidden agendas, no preconceived, confirmation biases that we're right. It's like, what would motivate everybody here? What's getting
Yeah.
in the way of that? How do we change the culture and the environment? And we became very people focused, did an awful lot of innovative things for that time in how we managed, communicated, and organized people to do their work. And I would say our turnover rate went very, very low. We grew
Hmm.
very quickly. In 18 years, starting at zero, when we were acquired, we were doing today's equivalent of $100 million, $125 million a year in
Wow.
revenue between the 650 people. So
Yeah.
after that Friday afternoon, 5 years later, we were on the Inc. 500 that said we were one of the 500 fastest growing privately owned businesses in the entire United States. So we learned
Wow.
our lesson.
Yeah.
People are very important. AI is not going to replace a lot of people. It will give them time to do higher level thinking
Yeah.
and developing more emotional maturity. And I'm
Right.
saying that because when AI comes into an organization, you got to solve problems. So you need to critically think them through and figure out, how are people going to react to this? What moves
Hmm.
do we make with that consideration in mind? Tell
Yeah.
me the incentive and I'll tell you the outcome. So, how are we incentivizing everybody and communicating with them? So, that was the big turnaround period in my career, in my life. And what I thought was the worst day of my business career, 5 years later, ended up being the best. And then after that, when we were acquired, that was even better. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, it's hard earned, though. Don't
Yeah. Yeah.
it's hard earned. It's not just, oh wow, you were lucky. Nah, we worked for our luck very hard.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine what that conversation was between you and your brother. And I think it, there could have been the blame game. There could have been all kinds of things that could have gone on. And it's a really good lesson. A lot of our audience are new leaders and, you know, they, congratulations, you have the promotion. And I'm always like, congratulations, you have the promotion. Now nothing's about you. It's about everybody else on the team. And,
Exactly.
so how'd your relationship, like, how did that go with you and your brother and the relationship, like that realization of, oh my God, we've got to
Well,
change.
well, at that point, when 40% of your revenue disappears, that means on Monday you talk to the bank about your covenants, your,
Yeah.
the things you've got agreements with the bank. That's a material change, and they need and want to know about it. And then the grapevine starts to develop throughout the business community.
Hmm.
And my brother and I had a very good relationship from the standpoint of being able to communicate, um, and not make it personal in any way, shape, or form, because we both knew we were running the business. It wasn't one or the other, it was the way the
Yeah.
business was. It really kind of focused us on what is good work. And that's been an ongoing exploration on my part ever since.
Yeah.
But what happened afterwards, we knew we were at the abyss of looking over that cliff called failure.
Hmm.
And we were saying, we'll make any change we have to in ourselves. We'll change ourselves first so we can change the business second. So we sat back and said, here's what we own. Here's the mistakes we made. Here's what our assumptions were and our beliefs. Here's the meaning that we gave to everything. But here's the meaning our employees need to be able to grow and thrive in an ongoing business in their career. And we can help
Yeah.
them focus on their career. Now, is that every single individual? No, because not every individual wants to really develop an outstanding career and growth and everything like that. And that's fine. There's
Right.
places
Yeah.
for those people in organizations, but it enabled us to create a foundation for what good work really meant. And that means we trust employees and they trust us with open dialogue, which we didn't have before. So there's psychological safety there.
Yeah.
And we created an environment around that entire, I'm going to say, dictum of people have to be able to win. Everybody has to win within the organization, not just the superiors, not just the senior leaders, middlemen. Everybody has to win, down to the person at the front lines doing all the work with the clients every day.
Yeah.
So it made us communicate better, but it made us better people. And tough way of doing it, but that's usually the way it happens in business.
And so true, and in life, I think, really.
Yeah.
You talk about, with this change. Then now you talk about building for flexibility in times of like radical change.
Mm-hmm.
How do running a business that's resilient and agile? How does it differ from the traditional, like the ones with the traditional hierarchy where it's command and control?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thank you. Um, most businesses are designed around efficiency,
Mm-hmm.
control, if you will. Make sure everything's controlled. We can control our costs, very financially focused.
Yeah.
And then they look at productivity, bottom line results, ROI, cost of capital, and things like that. Those things can't be forgotten.
Yeah.
They have to have an element in every business going forward. But I think there's new business models that need to evolve and need to be introduced, and that is more of a resilient, flexible type of environment. Now, in order for that to happen, and let's face it, change today is rampant. We're never going to see a slower pace of change because of technology, world events,
Right.
everything that comes into it. But we recognize change in three buckets, I believe. We recognize it at work, the business. We recognize it in our personal life, relationships, whether it's at home or at work. And then we
Mm-hmm.
recognize it in our health. That's where we really discover change. So we sit back and say, how do we go about changing or managing and processing change better? Events of impact are going to hit us all the time, and it's going to force us to change. So
Right.
the more we resist it, the more we're going to damage our careers, our businesses, etc. So we have to learn to accept change, and that means I learned to process it. Now, what do I mean by process it? Business has a purpose. Business has core values. If they're not
Yeah.
aligned with the individual, you got a problem because they can't process change because our values are different, our beliefs are different.
Yep.
So you sit back and you say, how do I get belief alignment? So you look at what are my beliefs, my opinions about things, and what are the employees? What emotions are we all feeling? Are we feeling
Mm-hmm.
jazzed and excited? Or are we feeling apathy and frustration all the time?
Right.
Then what are the meanings that we're assigning to things? So that's the core of, I think, emotional awareness. I know inside myself, I'm feeling conflict, so I'm avoiding conversations, or I'm
Yeah.
not having the tough conversations, or if I do, they're kind of in an assertive, aggressive manner, perhaps, because I don't know how
Yeah.
to manage conflict inside myself. So let's assume somebody has a performance review with an individual who's not been performing according to what I, the leader or their manager, believe they should be. You know there's going to be conflict. If I don't know how to resolve it in myself, I'm not going to have a good conversation with them. Either that person or I will walk away probably being pissed off, resentful, saying bad things. So engagement goes down, and that's a cancer because that gets into the rumor mill.
Right.
So that means we've got to be able to identify the change. Where's it happening in our life, work, personal, health? How do
Mm-hmm.
we deal with it? And to me, the way you deal with it starts with a growth mindset. I learn from everything.
Yeah.
Learning is the important thing, not protecting my ego, but what can I learn? Which means I got to accept negative feedback.
Mm-hmm.
I can't protect my ego, myself. I got to look beyond that and I got to listen to people and meet them where they are, not expect them to meet me where I am. Now I
Yeah.
can begin to plan. Now I can begin to not to identify breakage, I'll say, in processes and workflow, or even personal reactions to things, and be able to talk to them and guide them through it in a non-conflict way, or at least in conflict, point out what is good. Because there's good things that come from conflict. One of them is innovation. Another one
Yeah.
is I'll discover things in myself that I didn't know was there if I stay positive and look for the good. Then I
Hmm.
can learn from it. Now, all of a sudden, all those, many of those major personal obstacles begin to disappear. And I can, with AI, begin to focus on higher level value driven work. And that'll
Hmm.
be one of the differences in this environment where we have to build resiliency and change management, if you will, into the
Yeah.
business system.
Yeah.
That if we don't do that, we won't have that free time. There'll be personal fires, personal animosity that gets
Yeah.
in the way. So we learned that we need to be able to become better individuals and develop better businesses and environments to be able to manage in this new world of AI because it's radically different.
It really is. It's fascinating. I'm a Gen Xer, and I love it. And I have colleagues who are just hating it, and it's such an interesting conversation to have. And then my Gen Zers are like, "Eh." I'm like, "What are you talking? This is so So there's so much. I think there's a lot of emotion, like you were saying, around it. What do you think the biggest challenges are when a company's trying to implement AI, and how would you advise someone on how to
Mhm.
address those challenges?
I think the biggest obstacle is people, it's just uncertainty in people saying, am I still going to be valid here? Let's
Yeah,
use an example. An individual is in a business and their identity is tied
yeah,
up in, I'm a doer. I fix things in the business. You want the month end to close correctly? Come to me. I get things done. So all of a
right,
sudden AI comes in and you've got number one, first important thing, and these are in the book. Number one, you got to have your numbers tie out. You've got to have systems and data, number one and two, put in
yeah,
place. You got to have data correct that AI can access it. Number two, you need to have a system. Number three, then you start putting in AI over that. Not
mm,
until those first two things are done. But in order for that change to happen, management, leadership has to communicate why we're going to do this and how it's going to impact your job. We may not know everything in total, but we do know these changes are going to come about. We want to do away with the fires. We want to run through a system that AI can use. And in turn, it's going to make you, the employee, more intelligent. In turn, you're going to go back and fine tune, if you will, the agents and the orchestration of agents so that you are making them more intelligent. So all of a sudden, you have a flywheel of a growth
yeah,
mindset, intelligence. I'm learning all the time. Now I don't have the fires. I can focus on a higher level work. I'm happier. I'm not dealing with
yeah,
all this BS all day of things that are distracting and getting in my way, and emotionally I can't deal with all of this stuff.
yeah.
So you've got to deal with it from the standpoint of communicating what AI is, what it means, how it's going to impact the individual, and show them there's a positive side to all of this.
Mm. Yeah, we talk a lot about I've got two companies. One of my other company, we talk a lot about like automate what should be automated, like the that right, but augment and then lead, like you said, lead the humans for that higher level critical thinking. And we're always talking with our clients about don't let the critical thinking skills go away. AI
Mhm.
is not the end all be all. I was having some technical difficulties yesterday with a platform, and I knew it was just a setting. I knew it. I went through the AI chat twice. They went through the settings, didn't find it. I finally got connected to a human. You can imagine my frustration level. And that human went in, looked, and said, "Oh, just uncheck this box."
Yeah,
And I'm like, "That was an hour,"
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So I think it's fascinating, and we do need humans. So
yes.
you mentioned this belief, emotion, and meaning formula, and the good work equation. Can you walk us through that equation and how leaders can use these today?
Yeah. Okay, let me just preface that if I can before I answer
Yeah,
it, that
of course.
we did an awful lot of work at Guidewise, my co-founder, who is my son also.
Oh,
We did an
nice.
awful lot of
Oh,
work on change management and how do you get people to adopt change. And we understand, though, that there are three components that AI has to work within. Number one, it has to be tied to a business objective that you can
Mm-hmm.
identify an ROI on, other than it's creating better emails and other and PowerPoint presentations
Yeah.
faster. So I'm increasing
Right.
my productivity. Okay, but I don't know how that hits the bottom line. So you've got to get it into a business objective. Number two, you have to understand the technology, because AI has many facets. There's many things it can do, but there's many things it can't do. It does
Right.
not read spreadsheets real well. It thinks a spreadsheet is a book and it's trying to read it like a language in a book. And that's not what it does. It's called a large language model.
Right.
Okay. So
Yeah.
we have to understand that. And then we have to be able to say people have to use the technology that'll increase and achieve the goal in the business objective. So those
Mm-hmm.
three things go together. The people adoption we spend an awful lot of time on. And unfortunately, many businesses say, I don't want to buy or I don't want to purchase help on employees for personal
Yeah.
development, I'll call it developing self awareness, or real
Yeah.
leadership training of leading myself, know thyself. But when they get involved in technology and it's not working and it's not being adopted by the people, they have to figure out why isn't it? And it's not because the frontline people just don't want to use it. That may be a part of it. And that's a cultural problem, though,
Right.
not an individual problem. That's a cultural problem and a cultural fit alignment. So we find when they get in there, they'll say, well, we need to work on these people. It's like, yeah, we bundle it into our services now, but we
Yeah.
offer a very unique way of getting people's adoption rates higher in using technology to achieve the business solution. That's the magic formula you got to follow.
Okay. Like, love it. Okay.
So I can also give you an example too about how does that formula work. You're in a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's wearing a tie that you don't like. So immediately you think about that. So that person starts talking. It conjures up some type of an event. Oh, it reminds me of anybody that wears a tie like that. Always had an argument with them. This isn't preposterous. It happens. So all of a sudden,
Okay.
you're not walking into that with a belief system that is a growth mindset and open and looking for good things to come out of the meeting. We have a choice. We
Right.
can look at what works and what is good, or we can look at what doesn't work and throw everything out. Well, that's what most people do.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it's not the right formula. So you got to be able to go in and say what works. That's a belief, looking for what works. What emotions am I feeling right now? If I'm feeling negative about a person because I didn't like their appearance or how they make a presentation or how they talk and it gets on my nerves,
Right.
and I can't manage that inside myself by changing my beliefs to get to different emotions, I'm going to create a meaning of this whole thing. And that means I'll probably be assertive, aggressive, not listening. I'll have my own, I'm going to say, priorities and agendas of what I want to do to prove that I'm right to protect my ego and they're
Yeah.
wrong. Now, all of a sudden, there's a battle. How's that impact the business? Low engagement. Cross
Yeah.
functional teams don't work because there's no leader cross functionally, there's only department leaders.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now all of a sudden, productivity breaks down, results break down. We start blaming each other because we don't have the emotional maturity to say, let's talk this through. What
Mm.
works for everybody? If we've got too many goals, let's prioritize them. If we can't
Yeah.
prioritize them, then we got something bigger. Let's talk about that issue. But you've got then, I'm going to say, the maturity and the thinking, reasoning ability through critical thinking to be able to think through problems,
Yeah.
because that's what the resilient organization has to do. In change creates problems, but problems create opportunities.
Yeah.
That's where innovation comes from.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
where you then say, I need 20 seconds of insane courage to get myself out of this mindset that I'm in. I
Yeah.
have to find what's good and working, and that's what I focus on because that keeps everybody positive. Then we can see we actually win and things are getting better, et cetera, et cetera. So that formula is invaluable in helping people adopt change and particularly adopt change in a technology that will help them achieve a business objective.
Yeah, and that's a really great formula. And you said a couple of things in there where the company becomes a bunch of departments, and we talk about constantly, and I think you and I are very much aligned in whatever happens inside the company affects your customers and your client base. Like they're treated as well as the employee that's interacting with them are being treated. And I think that is something that is really lost among some leaders who are in that command and control.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times leaders say, I don't have time to train or develop. And our philosophy is you don't train people because you train dogs. Like we want to spend time developing people, right? So get the word training out of your vocabulary and just think about how are you developing them. So why is mentoring people through change one of the most important leadership skills? What have you found?
I think have to identify your leaders in the future, and that's never going to be 100% of your employee or your workforce. So you identify, and let's just say it's the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
You're going to identify for every 100 employees, the 20 who are going to be the key leaders that you're going to build the business around, but you're going to keep working and bringing people in and trying to get them interested that, hey, you can develop a career. Here's where we can take it. You have to do that or you can't manage future growth. Who's going to manage it? You're going to collapse. You're going to come back to that core of what it is. So you've got to build a system. That's the key to getting the best out of people and keeping them positive that system is fair and it makes it so everybody can win, but enables us to make better decisions because we have time to think through cause and effect and root cause analysis and actually put those things in play instead of, I don't have time to talk about this nice stuff like emotional maturity.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you have to be right in everything, you will be right, but you won't get really good people around you, so you will not grow your business.
Yeah.
So you've got to be able to just simply come back and say, look, we're all in this together. We want to get an outcome. Here's where we're going in the future. Here's what's going to be required to do it. Now let's all work together. And that's a cultural challenge right there. And that's the hardest challenge to keep a business in a growth mindset, because once you lose that, then the rumor mill takes over.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're breaking into power plays between people, and you got the old silos, and they got their own information and data that they're using and arguing against each other. And AI collapses in that environment. Can't make it. You've got to create the context, and that's the fourth element in the book that people have to develop. The fifth one is you got to create your future leaders and identify them.
Yeah, I think that's so key. And you got to identify those future leaders. You also have to ask them if they want to be a leader. A lot of times you identify the wrong people, those high performers, and they're like, I don't really want to like step into that role because managing people is different, So what have you observed about leaders who focus only on the technology, and versus those who address the human side? So what are the differences in those companies and turnover rates and things like that you've observed?
Well, I think let's just say it's a human approach and that's a little bit more idealistic versus a practical approach. Practical says everything's got to tie out, everything's got to be efficient. It's all control oriented. That's why you've got to do A, B, and C. And I'm going to say it's a highly governed environment. Now, that can be really good. But you have to balance that out with the people aspect. And that means emotions. That means formulating and helping them form their beliefs and formulate the meaning of going to work. What is the meaning of going to work other than picking up a paycheck and going home at 5 o'clock and keeping my head down and don't create any waves? Okay, those employees are going to be there. If they do routine jobs, AI is going to be a threat to them.
Right.
But you're going in and you're looking at it so you can help them create their own identity, because that person I mentioned earlier that says, I'm the fix-it person, come to me and I'll get it done. I create, heroics and I just make things happen. Where all of a sudden now the systems take over and they say, well, what's my value? Well, your value isn't putting out fires. Your value is preventing fires from happening. That's a different belief system.
Yeah.
I got to fine tune that more. I got to work with them. That's what mentoring is. I got to work with their psychology of how they approach work and how they approach their own value inherently in themselves. So it starts inside, moves in the inner world, goes to the outer world of the business, relationships with others, how it's impacting your health, etc. And it can be done. I mean, people and businesses actually can grow and win. We've proven it.
Yeah.
Can they do it in the wrong way? Absolutely, but they're short term. Now we've got changes. We got new business models and new things people have to learn. I think it's going to be a very positive time that we're moving into the next 5 years. But if you don't grasp the AI and develop an intelligent business and develop your people all in that business objective, keep that as your guides, you're going to lose out to your competition pretty quickly because
Yeah.
AI does make a huge difference in compounding intelligence within the business because they can think, perform at high level work, create higher value in the company. Higher value doesn't necessarily mean just increased revenue.
Right.
Higher value means how's it impacting my people on the front line who are taking care of my clients? How's it impacting the products we're bringing out? Are our clients enjoying using them?
Yeah.
So you've got to get in and ask people questions and the practical, what's the implications? Because we have to make money. We have to make a profit. That's the
Right.
given, but we can't just use and abuse people in order to make that happen.
And I think one thing that you said very clearly is like, if you're not embracing this in a way that's intelligent and on the human side, then in 3 to 5 years, your company could become a dinosaur.
Absolutely.
Right? Could
Yeah.
absolutely do that. So we have a rapid fire segment.
Okay.
A couple questions, quick, short answers. You up for that?
Yep. Absolutely.
All right. Awesome. Okay. So what, in your opinion, what is one leadership habit that helps to build a resilient culture?
Just listening to people without a hidden agenda.
Okay. The biggest mistake companies make with AI?
They allow everybody to do it on their own, not tied to a business objective.
Ooh, love that. What is one question every leader should ask during change?
How am I managing and processing change in my own life before I look at helping or guiding or demeaning and judging other people and how they're managing change in their life?
Okay. What is the best advice for creating good work across a team?
Good work takes four things. Number one, you got to make sure you build trust with people. If you don't trust the business, you don't trust the business systems, you don't trust the data, you're never going to trust AI. So trust has to be there so people can psychologically feel safe to be critical thinkers. They're not negative, they're just critically thinking.
Mm-hmm.
But you still can critically think in a negative way, and that's not good. So trust is number one. Number two, got to be able to have clarity. Well, trust will help bring clarity, and clarity comes by having a systems-driven business so you know how decisions are made, and you're keeping a log. Was this a good decision or bad, and what made it good or bad? What happened? That's cause and effect, and the analysis of the marketplace and things like that. That leads to number three, I know what I own. If I can trust the systems, the people I'm working with, the technology, and the company, and I can have clarity on what the outcomes are I'm responsible for, then I can own it because I know it. Now, not all employees want to own and know with clarity what their job is because then they might get in trouble if they don't perform well. But that all goes back to trust. Okay. And the fourth area is just growth. What am I learning? And what are we as a business learning? And what are we as a team learning in all of this? So if I can get trust, if I can get clarity, ownership, and then learn from all of that, that's the beginning of the flywheel in a business where you're compounding intelligence, but now you're using AI in a specific way in order to make that happen. Compounding intelligence is different than I have a business that has high standards and good people and we're doing really well, but I'm not using and adopting AI. You're going to lose if you don't do that.
Oh my gosh, that was great. Last question on this one here. What does a truly intelligent, adaptable culture feel like for the team?
Um, I'd say number one, when you have an obstacle, it's not a career killer, a deal killer, or anything like that. An obstacle is embraced by people to say, we've got something to learn here. This is going to be good because we can make the product, the work environment, ourselves, the business better in what we do. And we build trust so we can get clarity, ownership, and then keep learning. So people have to learn. They have to enjoy learning and embracing the difficulty and the uncertainty because change causes uncertainty. but out of that comes innovation and a new opportunity to develop the company and make it better.
That's great. Those are great insights. Thank you so much for playing along and you wealth of information. If you could leave our listeners with one key thought about intelligent leadership, what would it be?
It's going to acquire a change in different type of thinking, belief systems, emotions that you experience. So you got to be able to navigate into different emotional mindsets. Number three, the meanings. But overall, your behaviors create circumstances. Consistent behaviors create an outcome, if you will, or your circumstances. You have the power to control your reaction to things. That control over reaction, how you react to obstacles, will create the foundation for an intelligent business.
That's excellent. Thank you so much for all the practical wisdom and the real world experience that you shared with us today, Ted. It was just such a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much.
Of course, yeah. So that wraps up another valuable episode of the People Profit Podcast. If Ted's message on building intelligent business inspired you and got you to think a little bit, please like, subscribe, and share this episode. Ted, before I go, can you tell our audience the best way to connect with you and Guidewise and your book as well?
You can go to the website, and that's Guidewise, 2 words joined as one, .ai. You can email me at ted@guidewise.ai, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Ted Wolf, and it's Ted Wolf 2 spelled out TWO. That's my URL, if you will, to get to my LinkedIn profile.
Awesome. That's great. I'm excited for you guys to all reach out to Ted. And again, thank you again for joining us today. We really do appreciate it.
Oh, thank you very much, Sandra. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. And leaders, remember, people win first. I'm Sandra Coker. We'll see you next time.